Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to UroNurse. I'm your host, Vic Sinise. If you're watching us live, great. You could be watching us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, X, and StreamYard, of course. Any of those are fine. We're glad to have you on the show. We come to you every Saturday at 9 a.m. Central Time. So never miss an episode. No excuse. Hey, if you've never checked us out before, be sure to check out our website, First Timers. Go to uronurse.com to learn more about the show. It's the best place to find information about the show and what's going on with other podcasts. And hey, all of our previous episodes are always available online, 129 of them. And it's the fastest way to find them is through our website. Now, some of you like to listen in your car. No problemo. Just go to our UroNurse Plus area. Our audio podcast comes out about an hour after every episode. It's available through any of your favorite podcasting, audio podcasting avenues like Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. So this week we got a great show. We're going to be joined by Kate Boutin from Ambu, who's going to talk about this new cystoscope that's disposable. Yes, you throw it one-time use and you can get rid of it. So that's going to be interesting. We're going to have her joining us. But we do have our experts joining us here today. Let's go ahead and bring our experts in today right now. Experts, welcome to the show. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Vic. Yep.
All right. I think we'll go ahead and do our introductions. Everybody who doesn't know who I am, my name is Vic Sinise. I'm the guy who started this show, and I've been in urology for the past 40 years, loving every moment of it, and decided that, hey, now it's time to pass it on, some of this valuable information that I have. So I started it and asked a few of my friends to join me, and I've had some great experts who joined the show and guest experts like Kate, who's joining us today, so that we can all learn more together. So let's go ahead and switch over to Lori. You can give your talk, your introduction.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lori Atkinson. I'm a certified urology registered nurse. I have been a urology nurse since 1998 and currently work for Northwestern Medicine in Geneva and Winfield, Illinois.
All right. And then Kate, why don't you go ahead and explain who you are?
Absolutely. Thanks, Vic. So Kate Boutin here. I am currently in my home office out of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I've been in urology for over a decade, and I come from a sales and marketing background. My previous lives, I have carried the bag actually selling the disruptive, minimally invasive technology called the UroLift system here in the Raleigh area. Moved on over to marketing for ProSet Biorobotics and completed some sales experience with Medtronic endoscopy solutions. And here I'm with Ambu and happy to be here.
All right. So I have a technical difficulty right now. I can't seem to switch my slides over. So there it is. There. Okay. So I lost my mouse for a moment. I don't know where it went. I've got too many monitors, I think, open, and it just started going to one of the other monitors. But hey, we got the show ready to go. Kate, if you're ready, I'm going to bring up your slides and take it away.
Sounds great. Well, excellent. So again, I am here on behalf of Ambu and discussing our cystoscopy solution for HCPs and nurses and APPs alike. Let's get right into it. We're going to talk today about a few items. So we have Ambu history, which I'll go over, where we started, where we are today. We'll talk about the endoscopy specialty solutions across the entire organization, and then go into the urology portfolio. We'll talk about the cystoscope technical specifications as well as practice efficiencies, and then follow up with sustainability and open it up for Q&A. All right. So this timeline here really highlights where we started in 1956 to where we are today. And we really pioneered the evolution of single-use endoscopy and medical devices for over 85 years. From the Ambu bag, which you all know, there's a picture of it on the bottom left there. It looks very different today, but it still holds the same purpose and the same solution from Ambu to the practitioner. We have our newest product launches, which we'll talk about one of those today, which is the Cysto 5 HD, as well as SureSight. And we continue to lead the way in single-use endoscopy innovation. Here at Ambu, we're really focused on forward-thinking solutions and have built on more than a decade of single-use endoscopy for reliable, sterile, and cost-effective solutions to our customers. We launched the world's first single-use flexible bronchoscope in 2009, and today more than 1 million of our single-use endoscopies are used in more than 6,000 hospitals globally. We have the largest single-use R&D team in the world, and Ambu has a global R&D workforce of approximately 350 employees across 3 dedicated R&D centers in Denmark, Germany, and Malaysia. Our modular design approach and infrastructure enables us to develop high-quality, single-use technologies across clinical areas and deliver it efficiently. We're fully focused on single-use endoscopy, and 20% of our single-use revenue is fed back into product innovation. We have an in-house value chain along with experienced, reliable experts, which allows our customers to standardize with single use across multiple clinical specialties and service lines. Going forward, thinking about the endoscopy solutions I just mentioned, we're in pulmonary, we're in ENT, we're in gastroenterology, and of course, urology, which we'll be talking about today with the AScope 4 Cysto and the AScope 5 Cysto HD. We also have a ureteroscope on that platform as well. Here we have our urology portfolio. We have our AScope 4 Cysto on the left, and newly launched mid-November 2024 as our AScope 5 Cysto HD. We have our ureteroscope on the right here, and then our aView 2 Advanced, which is one of two of our displaying units. And that really is that's a platform whereby all of the scopes in those specialty areas can plug into this displaying unit. Excuse me. And we also have an A-Box 2, which is a more stationary displaying unit that's meant for the OR use. This aView 2 Advanced here is the more portable solution, again, supporting the full single-use ecosystem. So let's get into what is our cystoscope here. So I'm going to talk about and run through from tip to tail what we're actually working with. So we have our handle here at the right, our bending angle and our bending lever, deflection of 210 up and 120 down. We also have a working channel of 6.6 French for tools up to 6.0 French to be inserted through that working channel. We are a truly plug and play device whereby the cord here, you can see it just plugs right into the aView 2 Advanced, popping up your image right on the screen. We also have a 388 millimeter length for the insertion cord, as well as the outer diameter is 16.2 French. We have a camera sensor at the distal tip of the scope, which is 800 by 800 pixels, which allows full HD visualization. And then we also have our ARC technology. So that technology allows the practitioner and sometimes the patient, if you're having the camera and the displaying unit facing the patient, allows them to see the enhanced vascularity. So in this slide, you can see ARC is off, and that stands for advanced red contrast. ARC is off here on this page on the left. And then we have on the right, when you're turning ARC on, it really allows those colors to come forward that are red, highlighting vascularity and also highlighting potential lesions or suspected areas. So the technical specifications of aScope and aView here, again, it's single-use digital cystoscope, a 16 French, outer diameter with a 6.6 French channel, and again, highlighting that it's plug and play. our AV2 Advanced HD monitor, fully portable, full HD resolution, picture and video capabilities, dual screen capabilities, and we are able to integrate into the EHR of the hospital system or the clinic through PACS and DICOM. All right, so this is what this looks like when you're integrated to the PACS and to your EHR through PACS and DICOM. We have a work list capability. We're the only company in the industry for single-use endoscopes that provides the work list interface. The patient can be selected at this point during the or before the procedure. Pictures and videos taken are automatically uploaded to the EHR. We see a lot of practitioners and surgeons taking pictures with their phone of the image that they want and then uploading it to the patient chart afterwards. So our work list and our integration really eliminates the need for that. All right, let's get into practice efficiencies here. All right, we're going to talk about three things here: clinical advantages, operational advantages, and financial advantages. So as I would imagine, there are many healthcare practitioners and nurses watching this right now. And so the four scenarios here, I'm sure everyone can relate to and has had some experience with in their tenure in their profession. So we're talking about delays here, right? Delays that can push difficult and critical procedures with reusable cystoscopes, right? If these are not available. Reprocessing is required for reusable cystoscopes. The turnaround time can be lengthy. It often delays or interrupts the clinic flow and in the OR as well. What happens when your scope goes down, right? When your reusable scope goes down for repair? Is the repair service, is it reliable? Is it timely? Are you getting those loaner scopes in time to have your cases? And, what's the cost associated, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But not having a scope can cause a backlog, can cause cancellations and rescheduling conflicts, not to mention if your patients are unhappy with the service that they're getting, they may go somewhere else. So, speaking about nursing, the impact on nursing here is that what happens when, there's a delay and the reprocessing, staff may be forced to do after hours work, as well as the nursing staff may be forced to do after hours work. This really negatively impacts morale. The staff is not getting home to their families. They're sitting in traffic. We've seen it time and time again where single use, especially with add-on cases on a Friday, for example, this allows practitioners to finish their work and get on the road more quickly. Again, we have clinical advantages here. Our cystoscope in the single-use aspect is really superior to the reusable scopes when taking into consideration infection control and performance. The limited cross-contamination or infection concerns, that is absolutely can be found for a scope system, and infection control standards as well. Consistent performance, right? So no degradation of image quality or deflection. You get a new scope every time. We're also starting to see the FDA come through highlighting that they're seeing reports of infections with associated reprocessing of specifically urological endoscopes. We've seen multiple reports come through over the years. If you all have been in the industry for a few years, you've seen the Karl Storz recall in 2022. And that's where we really were able to have an advantage of moving in and helping clinicians and practices and, helping them see patients and working through that. That was a huge advantage for Ambu and for patients and clinicians. And of course, we have the guidelines here. So we really need to make sure that we're looking at single-use cystoscopes as an option to meet those clinical needs. All right, now let's move into operational advantages. What does this mean for the practice at the operational level? They really need solutions that can drive meaningful effectiveness and efficiencies and higher patient throughput. And our scopes, our single use scopes, really check all those boxes. It eliminates the scope sterilization. Patient and staff satisfaction are increased. Doctors like this because they get to see more patients. How many times have you heard a urologist say, I just want to see more patients and do surgery? So this allows them to accomplish that goal. It can use space more effectively in the room. If it's a private practice, you're soaking scopes on the counter. If it's in an OR, or a hospital affiliated workspace, there's often a dedicated room for this, right? So this eliminates the space that's needed to reprocess instruments. And then, of course, APP utilization. We're becoming more efficient because nurses and APPs will be able to perform these cystoscopy procedures. I really like this slide because it goes into what are we talking about when we think about the cost of reusable cystoscopes? Well, there's three main drivers of cost here, which is your capital outlay, your service and repair, and your reprocessing. These all play a huge factor in making decisions for the overall cost to the practice or the clinic or to the hospital when thinking about what scopes they're going to move forward with. Is it going to be reusable or single use? Single use eliminates all of these. I like this slide as well because it really shows the amount of waste and water used that I think most of us don't think about when we're thinking about how can it be efficient from an operational perspective, and almost a recycling perspective as well. So your reusable cystoscope is going to use 16 gallons of water in one reprocessing cycle. That's significantly higher than your single-use waste, right? And we'll get into sustainability and waste here in just a few minutes, but reprocessing consumes way more water than the average shower, and that's just for one use. Let's get into financial advantages. So for the practice, they're thinking about, administration is thinking about how can they reduce the cysto block time? How can they see more patients and then utilize APPs? It's all about efficiency. And they want to make sure that they're spending the money where they can get the most out of it, not only for the hospital, but for the staff and for the patients. A few interesting aspects here. The average MA time spent per case with reusable cystoscopy is 32 minutes. And the average time spent with single use is 10 minutes. And that was from a study at Mount Sinai. And with Duke Health, we ran two studies. This was an older study. The median number of daily cystoscopies increased after the transition over to single use from 9 to 16. Are updated, and I apologize, this is not the most up-to-date slide, but it's from 12 to 21. So huge increase in being able to see more patients, which means a greater revenue stream financially. Again, breaking this down a little bit further, what's the additional revenue that's seeing only one extra cysto patient per day? That's going to generate nearly $80,000 in additional revenue per year. All right, we're going to go into sustainability here. And this really ties it all into what Ambu is about and why the single-use aspect and how we do that so well and how we're efficient at what we do. So we're really committed to reducing our environmental impact. And we're the only company on the market that is doing this and that is invested in this. We've been invested in sustainability initiatives since day one. And we have really two strategic focus areas. One is reducing the impact of our product and packaging. The other is reducing our overall carbon emission and carbon footprint from our manufacturing. We're committed to sustainable endoscopy through circular products and packaging, which has to do with the move from a linear business model to non-renewable raw materials like plastics made of fossil oil and products ending up in a landfill, to circular business model using renewable raw materials such as bioplastics and recycling. Also, our commitment to operating responsibly and approaching a net zero emissions in collaboration with our suppliers and other partners. We're working to reduce this environmental footprint in our manufacturing of products, including the use of renewable electricity and minimizing waste. We have the very first tangible initiative within the circular products. They're the introduction of bioplastics to our endoscope handles. The first endoscope in the world made with bioplastics was our A-Scope Gastro Large. And at the end of 2024, the handles in all of our cystoscopy products and in the portfolio have been manufactured with bioplastics. And by the end of 2025, all of our endoscope handles across all specialties and service lines will be made with bioplastics. And that's the end of the show. Any Q&A at this time? Happy to answer.
All right. That was great. I will open up to questions from the audience. Feel free to put in any of your questions that you might have. I just want to pull these up here. Couple of things I'm going to kick off first of all. Now, I was involved with the SUNA's white paper on cystoscopy reprocessing, and so had done a lot of research. And I think that it's great to look at some of the things that single use has over reprocessing, and some of the findings that we came up with. When you're using chemicals like glutaraldehyde, it has to be properly ventilated so that you're not exposing employees to that. There's a cost in having that equipment or proper room setup so they're not getting overexposure to glutaraldehyde. The factor that, are they properly reprocessing them? You've got employee training, and you need to have somebody who's making sure that it's actually being done the way it should be, because a lot of these infections were caused from people not properly reprocessing equipment. So with the disposable, that takes all that out of it. And I think that's one of the points that I'd like to make. We also found that there were patients that actually, it's not only just the reprocessing and sterile or high level disinfecting, but rinsing it. As you said, how much water is used. If you don't rinse it properly, I've found some reports of patients that developed chemical cystitis or irritation of the bladder from not having the chemicals properly rinsed off. So have you had any of that information when you were kind of looking at it as a company? Those you, Kate.
Yeah. Oh, is that for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a huge part in, I've been with Ambu now for 6 months, and, coming from Medtronic and Procept and Teleflex, I think aligning kind of my values, if you will, to where am I going to go next, right? Where, we all have choices on where we want to work and who we want to work with. And I think knowing that they were invested in sustainability along with the bioplastic aspect, but having been a patient myself, right, as we get older, we need procedures and and things done. So taking a look at it from a consumer perspective too, it's like, well, I want to be aligned with not only a company that's doing right by the environment, but a company that's doing right by clinicians and patients, and thinking outside the box and knowing that there's a market for this and knowing that there's a gap, right? I think if you ask the majority of urologists today, if they heard of Ambu, they have. But there are some that haven't. And it's our job to educate on why this is so important. And then you're going to have customers asking for this, if they're not already. So yeah, it was an important factor for me when deciding to go with Ambu, for sure.
Good point. We do have a bunch of questions coming in. Lori, if you'd want to read some of those off for us.
Sure. So the first question, how will Ambu manage the 24% decrease in Medicare payment for cystoscopies to physicians in the next 2 years?
We're seeing this. We have an incredible healthcare economics and reimbursement market access team here at Ambu. So we are quite aware of that decrease. That 24% decrease is actually going to be not implemented at one time, but over the next 2 years, as this participant has mentioned. And we're doing our best to educate and see where this fits best into the practice. So again, we're aware of this number and this decrease in Medicare payment, but we're also educating them on what is the private insurance paying. And we're just guiding them from an educational perspective on what fits best for them, their practice, the hospital system, and their patients.
And what's the environmental impact of throwing away all these single-use scopes? This is a huge future environmental cost.
Absolutely. So not only is Ambu invested in bioplastics, but we're invested in a recycling program. So we had a partnership with Sharps, which has ended, and they're doing a trial pilot recycling program in Europe at this time, which will hopefully be launching by the end of 2025 here in the United States. So again, bioplastics is not biodegradable, but it's meant to be recycled. So that's the long-term goal here at Ambu, is that we want to make sure that we're taking our bioplastic handles and we're recycling them.
Good.
And are there any problems with insurance coverage?
I think covering the cost, okay, and I can see them on here on the screen, which is, Vic said that was helpful, and it sure is. I think at this point, Ambu is focused on, educating the healthcare providers, and we don't really have visibility into insurance covering or not covering. That's really on a practice level. But when you're talking about what's covered and what's not covered, our cystoscopes do not have their own code. It falls under the code of cystoscopy, which could be for reusable, which could be for single use. Cystoscopies as a code billed to insurance is not dependent on whether the scope is single use or reusable. So is the code getting reimbursed at the practice level? And that's something that, you'd have to ask the practice to learn more about at their specific site of service. I hope that's helpful.
Great information. What is the price for disposable scope, and again, the insurance coverage?
So it depends on your practice, right? We have a sales force of 48 reps around the country. I would encourage you, if you are a surgeon or your practitioner, to talk with your local sales rep. And we are on board with all the GPOs, so they can talk to you more about specific pricing for the practice or the hospital.
I think you touched on something that that probably is underestimated by some of the doctors' offices, and that's that patients are more savvy now. And I think that knowing of course, we're in the business, knowing it's a single-use item that's actually sterile rather than high-level disinfection, and knowing the difference between the two, that would be my preference. And knowing that it was properly reprocessed, you don't know that when you go in. You just trust that the doctor's office you're going to is doing all the things right. After doing a lot of research, I understand that that's not always the case. Now that doesn't want to discourage people from, thinking that all the doctors' offices aren't doing this right. It's just, there was a few that were found. But the thing is, I think that, the average person coming into the office is going to be a little more alert to that. And especially after the thing with stores that hit the news saying, that's a single use only, I'm the only one that's being used on. That's matters to me. I think that's going to make a difference.
I think you're absolutely right. As we become more educated as patients and more comfortable with advocating for ourselves, right? I think it's so important just to know, just to be educated so you can make an informed decision.
Yeah. Laura, do you have any thoughts
I
on?
have, yeah, I do. So from a staffing aspect, so we are currently using disposable scopes, and it's more so because we had paid a very, very high price for a high-level disinfection machine that
Mhm.
failed, and it needs a new compressor and yada yada, and sometimes our reusable scopes fail. And so right now we are using those scopes, and the plan is still to go back to the reusable scopes. However, it is really nice to have these scopes as a backup, especially when your equipment goes down. Because what was happening to us is our equipment would fail, and then we would have to cancel all these patients and wait for things to get fixed instead of having the disposable scopes. Now, also with the disposable scopes, the turnaround time is so nice because like you said, the amount of time it takes for our medical assistants or whoever is doing them to have to go and disinfect these scopes, it is extremely consuming. So it's really, really nice to be able to just hook it up, go, throw it out, next one in. And and the comments I've heard from the physicians as well is that it's nice that you could do it at the bedside in the hospital. You could do it,
Mhm.
if we have procedure rooms, but if somebody needs a scope, we just, move it right to the room and quick, it's done. So those are the great aspects of it.
That's
Yeah,
really,
this is the viewers on like a rolling IV pole. I mean, this is so simple to bring into
Mhm.
any room.
we actually, and thank you, Lori, for those nice remarks there. And your points are absolutely spot on and well taken. I've seen a few surgeons um, actually put our AV2 Advanced, the portable, it's 12 inches, right? It's a foot wide. Um, and it's about 5 pounds. They've actually put it into a bag on the cart, and they've have, yeah, a handful of cystoscopes on this cart, but they move it around, right? They can, just to your point, they move it bedside, so you can make any exam room a procedure room if you wanted
Mhm.
to. Super portable.
Can you kind of go over the process of setting up the scope for those that maybe have not used it? What, from the nuts and bolts from start to finish to setting this whole thing up?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, single use is meant to be efficient, and you can make it as efficient as you want. But most of the time, what you're seeing is a basic Mayo stand with your sterile pad, your blue pad. You're seeing a little bit of lubricant jelly. You're seeing a bag, maybe 1,000 mLs hanging, the cord from the bag, and then we have a Lurlock adapter, and you can either get, a stopcock, a disposable stopcock, or a Y valve, or you can hook it all depends on what your setup is and what your equipment is at the practice. And then you'll just affix the cord, the drip cord to the scope, and plug in the scope to the displaying unit. And it's color coded. So with the HD, it's gray, so gray to gray. And then with our standard scope, it's blue, so blue to blue. You can plug them at the same time. You can see dual view, but it's a very basic setup. You could even go more efficient and more minimalist and just have the Mayo stand and your cystoscope at the ready. It all depends on what your workflow looks like in the clinic, but it's plug and play. It's meant to be very simple, very, easy and efficient. And then when you're finished, it's unplug the water, unplug from the AVU2 Advanced, the display unit. We have some locations putting it in biohazard bags or just the regular trash. So at this time, the recycling program is forthcoming.
Yeah. And any calibration, white balance, or things like that need to be done. It's plug and play.
It really is. There's no white balance. I know some competitor scopes have white balance, including in the single-use space and in the reusable space for sure. No white balance. It's plug and play. Once you plug it in, it's about 8 seconds for it to display on the monitor, and you can go right in.
And what about the light source for this?
It's built in. So there's 2 LED lights at the distal tip, and the camera chip is right behind those, and then the working channel.
So for those of us that have been in this business a long time, like myself and Lori, almost not quite as long as me, cystoscopes, you go in to do a cystoscopy, the light doesn't work. The bulb had to be changed in the unit. Sometimes we're out of bulbs, so you couldn't do the scope because of that. This is built in. Again, scope just got used. Now you have to wait for the reprocessing time. That could be anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour to reprocess a scope. Can't do anything until then. So what do? You have a patient sitting in the the procedure room, tying it up for that length of time. So inefficiency, as you kind of pointed out. The scopes get used a lot in urology. It's kind of our bread and butter for what we do. We need it, but they wear out. If you're using the same scope over and over again, fibers break. You start getting a degradation in your picture. These chemicals that we use can put like a coating or fog on the lenses, and they don't get as clear as over time. So you're not always getting the best picture. I mean, they're good, but and they break themselves. So I think that this is really, to me, something that is the step in the right direction to prevent a lot of this wasted time, and that's really where we're going.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to add that I didn't touch on earlier is when you're inserting tools into the working channel, maybe a bug bee, the bending angle capabilities of the scope is very robust. So you're not seeing it, maybe not bend to the full deflection, but our scope certainly is capable of being able to bend the full deflection way, 210 up, down, up, and then 120 down as well. So I know tools in the working channel, either in the OR setting or sometimes the clinic setting, that's an important aspect as well that I don't think I mentioned earlier.
We did have a question or a comment coming in on insurance.
Insurance coverage for cystoscopy is usually not an issue, irrespective of single or disposable scope.
I would agree.
So can you comment on what the cost of a single scope is? So I know it's going to vary based on what your practice is buying in quantities, but kind of a ballpark figure. Is this a $5 scope, a $100 scope, $1,000 scope?
I think, Vic, that's a good point. And again, while I can't really go into specifics because it's volume dependent, it's practice dependent. You're not looking at $1,000 and you're not looking at $10. It's in the range between, let's just say, 80 and 150 for our Cysto 4, which is our standard resolution, and then Cysto 5 is a little bit higher there. You're not seeing anything in the 500 range either, right? You're not seeing anything in the 300 range.
Yeah. And I think that's just the point I wanted to make. This is not like it's a crazy expensive. It's obviously, physicians have to be able to afford to utilize it if they're being reimbursed less than the scope cost. That's a losing battle.
Yeah. And then that's a great point you bring up too. We have the healthcare and economics team. We have a dedicated person that I work with every week. And this person works with the sales team as well. And when they're looking at going forward with Ambu and their cystoscopes, they can produce what's called a budget impact report. And you get so many inputs from the customer as far as numbers, and they put it into their model. And their model kind of spits out what the cost savings would be on an annual basis by moving over to Cysto 4 or Cysto 5. And that really helps the practice to understand the savings, but then understand actually what goes in to all of the costs associated with reprocessing, right? It may not be just the top 3 you can think of, as we're talking right here. It goes a little bit deeper than that.
And you say Ambu's looking in the future to somehow being able to reprocess or reutilize these things so they're not just going into a landfill somewhere.
Absolutely. That's very important for Ambu.
All right, great. There's no other questions coming in from the audience. I don't see anything new. Lori, you have any other thoughts or comments?
No, from what I've seen as far as the disposable, I think that we'll continue to use them for certain purposes. Maybe not for every one of them, but definitely as backups or urgent, bedside stuff. So thank you very much. That was a great presentation.
Sure, my pleasure.
So I'm going to put a little plug in for next week's show. Join us next week. We're going to be having the whole SUNA group, big group from SUNA, talking about their conference.
In UroNurse episode 131, host Vic Sinise is joined by SUNA directors at large Andrea Strong, Jason Casey, and Bethany Parcel, alongside Dr. Tabo Mwikisa-Kelly, for an insightful discussion about the upcoming 2025 Advanced Urologic Conference. Together, they share expert insights into the conference's agenda, highlight key sessions, and provide essential tips for attendees to maximize their experience. This episode is a must-watch for urology professionals looking to stay ahead in the field. Join us next week to learn more.
So if you're interested in that conference, this is going to be your chance to talk to the experts from SUNA about the conference and evaluate whether this is something you want to be a part of or not. I'm hoping everyone will be a part of it. And let me just bring myself up here. So just a couple other things. After this show at 10:30, we're going to be talking about our newest podcast, the Dr. Jeff Sex and Intimacy. So Dr. Jeff's going to be joining us for the Uro Patient podcast with some information about that show. And if you want to know more about the show or be a part of it, it's every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Central Time. Dr. Jeff talks about sex and intimacy. He's got a whole bunch of great guests that are joining. We have a guest joining us this Tuesday on Desire in the Real World, Intimacy and Desire in Relationships Unpacked. So join us for that show. And always join us for UroNurse every Saturday at 9 a.m. Central Time. I can't tell you what a great privilege it is for me to have fantastic people come on this show to talk about all their products and to kind of educate us about everything that we need to know about urology and getting information from you guys. I always appreciate what your comments are. And I think I saw a couple of come in just at the end. A couple of thank yous. Hey, thank you. And thank you, because you're the reason we do this. So, hey, experts, thanks for coming on and spending your time with us. And we'll see everybody next week.